Ukrainian side is actually unsure because they were not informed about this particular prisoner exchange that the Russians are claiming they were preparing, and that those prisoners of war from Ukrainian armed forces were on board of the aircraft.
More than 70 people, thought to be mainly Ukrainian prisoners of war, have been killed when a Russian military plane crashed near the border between the two countries. This is what Moscow has said. I have to say that claim is disputed by the authorities in Kyiv in Ukraine. Now, photographs from the scene do show a wreckage of an aircraft lying in a snowy field, but there are no bodies visible in these images. The cause of the crash is so far unclear. Now, Orysia Lutsevych is Deputy Director of the Russia and Eurasia Programme and head of the Ukraine Forum at Chatham House. Orysia, what do you think, or what do you know about what's gone on here?
Well, I know pretty much what is available from the open sources is that there has been downing of the large aircraft, and that Ukrainian side is actually unsure because they were not informed about this particular prisoner exchange that the Russians are claiming they were preparing, and that those prisoners of war from Ukrainian armed forces were on board of the aircraft. And what is also very clear is that we can hardly trust what Russian official information we receive, because as we know from various crashes that have been taking place, from MH17 to the one that crashed with Prigozhin on board, there was a lot of manipulation and disinformation. So we'll have to probably rely a lot on open source data and on any further proofs that we can get from independent sources rather than on sources provided by the Russian Federation.
But what we do know is that exchanges of prisoners of war between the two sides, they are quite routine, are they?
Absolutely. This is quite unusual for this kind of interstate conflict, but there is a humanitarian line of contact that is preparing these exchanges of Russian and Ukrainian prisoners of war. They usually happen several times a year, with around 200 people being released from captivities. And that is the fact. This is happening as the war goes on.
And would the Russians normally transport POWs in a plane?
Well, from the public information, when we already see those exchanges, we usually see them arriving by buses to the point of contact with Ukrainian authorities. So this is quite unusual, and most of these people don't have contacts with either Ukrainian or International Red Cross. So we have very little information about the captivity locations for Ukrainian prisoners of war. But it's quite suspicious that they would have been held so far away from the conflict line.
Yes, OK, so that is puzzling. Ukraine, of course, says that there never were any prisoners of war on that plane, that the plane, in fact, contained weaponry of some sort. What do you think about that?
Well, and again, I think this will have to be experts on the explosions that will analyze the videos. That this could be established if indeed there were a lot of S-300 rockets, missiles, as the Ukrainians are claiming. We would be able to identify it from the footage if it's originally and not doctored. But Ukrainian military intelligence has confirmed that they are indeed attacking supply lines and carriers that are supplying missiles to launch them against Ukrainian civilian cities, as we have seen, including yesterday, a very deadly attack against 80 civilian buildings across Ukraine, including in Kyiv and in Kharkiv. So this is a very, very high intensity war.
Yeah. So I'm afraid you've been very honest, and you've freely admitted that you don't know exactly what's happened here. It may have crashed. It may have been shot down. We don't know who may or may not have done it. In fact, we may never know, actually. Isn't that the truth?
That is the truth, as we have seen with many tragic events taking place over the territory of Russian Federation, from the death and killing of Nemtsov on the bridge in across the Kremlin to, the MH17, and it took international tribunal that was specially established to find the truth about that particular tragedy.
Thank you very much for giving us some of your time this afternoon. Orysia Lutsevych, Deputy Director of the Russia and Eurasia Programme and Head of the Ukraine Forum at Chatham House.